Please pretend you're my husband, the woman whispered to a Hell's Angel. What happened next shocked everyone. The rain started as a whisper against the courthouse windows, but by the time Elena Morales pushed through the heavy glass doors, it had turned into something angrier. She pulled her coat tight and hurried down the stone steps, clutching a manila folder against her chest like it might blow away in the wind. Inside that folder was the paper that mattered most in the world to her right now. Guardianship. Approved. Lily was hers, legally and forever. No judge or lawyer or distant relative could ever take her away again. Elena should have felt lighter. Instead, her chest still felt tight, the way it had felt every day since Sophia died 8 months ago. Relief and grief had a way of tangling together until she couldn't tell which one she was feeling at any given moment. The parking lot was nearly empty. Water ran in shallow rivers along the cracked asphalt, and the gray sky pressed low over the courthouse like a lid on a pot about to boil over. Elena's shoes splashed through puddles as she made her way toward her car, eyes down, mind already on picking Lily up from her after-school program. That was when she saw him. Before you continue listening, please let me know where in the world are you watching from today. Now back to the story. A polished black sedan sat near the parking lot exit, engine idling, wipers moving slow and steady. Leaning against the driver's door, untouched by the rain thanks to the wide brim of an umbrella, stood Damien Cross. Elena's stomach dropped. She hadn't seen him in months, not since before Sophia's funeral, but she recognized him instantly. The expensive coat, the careful haircut, the way he stood like he owned whatever ground he was standing on. Sophia's voice echoed in her memory, tired and scared during a phone call almost a year ago. He doesn't let go, Elena. He watches everything. He thinks he owns people. Elena's fingers tightened around her keys. She told herself it might be nothing. Maybe he had business at the courthouse. Maybe it was a coincidence. But when she reached her car and glanced back, Damien was already sliding into his sedan, eyes fixed on her the entire time. Elena drove out of the lot with her heart hammering against her ribs. She told herself she was imagining things, that grief made a person jumpy, that she'd been sleeping badly since the anniversary of Sophia's fall. But 3 turns later, when she checked her mirror out of habit, the black sedan was still there. 2 cars back. Patient. Steady. She turned left down a side street that led nowhere near her house, just to test it. The sedan turned too. Her hands went cold on the wheel. She thought about Sophia's warning, about the missing charity money, about the recipe box in the hall closet that Sophia always guarded, like it held something more precious than family recipes. Elena had wondered for months if Damien had been the one stealing from Haven Bridge, and if he thought Sophia left proof somewhere only Elena might find. She reached for her phone to call for help, but the screen flashed a dying battery warning before going black entirely. "No, no, no," she whispered, tossing it onto the passenger seat. The rain thickened until the road blurred into gray streaks. She could barely see the tail lights ahead of her, let alone find her way to the nearest police station, which she knew was a good 20 minutes out on a highway she didn't trust in this weather. Her breath came fast and shallow. Then she saw the lights of a roadside diner glowing through the storm. A squat little building with a flickering sign that read Blue Pine Diner. It wasn't much, but it was full of people. Witnesses, safety, or something close to it. Elena swerved into the gravel lot, tires slipping slightly before catching, and threw the car into park. She didn't wait to see if the sedan followed. She grabbed her folder and ran through the rain toward the door, her flats slapping against wet gravel. The bell above the diner door jingled as she pushed inside, breathless, soaked, and shaking. The warm air smelled like coffee and bacon grease. An elderly couple sat near the window. A tired waitress refilled a napkin dispenser at the counter. And in the back booth, alone, sat a broad-shouldered man in a worn leather vest, tattoos crawling up his thick forearms, a graying beard framing a face that looked like it had seen more trouble than kindness. Elena's stomach twisted with a new kind of fear. Then, through the rain-streaked window, she saw the black sedan pull into the lot. Elena did not let herself think. Thinking would have stopped her. She crossed the diner floor in 4 quick steps, slid into the booth across from the stranger, and then, realizing that side was still open to the door, moved instead right next to him, pressing her shoulder against his arm like she had done it 1,000 times before. "Please pretend you're my husband," she whispered, her voice shaking so hard the words nearly broke apart. "That man has been following me." She expected him to pull away, to ask questions, to tell her she was crazy. Instead, the big man's arm came around her shoulders like it had always belonged there. "Hey, honey," he said, loud enough for the room to hear, his voice low and rough but strangely warm. "You get soaked out there?" Elena blinked up at him, stunned at how easily the lie rolled off his tongue. His eyes flicked down to the folder still clutched in her hands. The tab on the side read, "Lily Morales, Guardianship." Something shifted in his face, quick and unreadable. "Did you call Lily?" he asked, tilting his head like a real husband might. "Let her know I'll be home for dinner?" Elena's throat tightened. She nodded, not trusting her own voice. The bell above the door jingled. Elena felt her whole body go rigid. Damian Cross stepped inside, water dripping from his umbrella, his eyes scanning the diner with the same careful precision he used for everything. When he found Elena, he did not look surprised. He looked like a man confirming something he already suspected. He started toward the booth. The big man beside her rose to his feet without hurrying, unfolding himself to his full height, which was considerably taller than Damian. He stepped half in front of Elena, blocking her from view, and offered his hand like they were meeting at a business dinner. "Cole Barrett," he said, "Elena's husband. Can I help you with something?" Damian's jaw tightened. "I need to speak with Elena, alone." "She doesn't look like she wants that," Cole said, his voice still calm, still even. Not a threat. Just a fact. "You don't understand," Damian said, leaning slightly to catch Elena's eye past Cole's shoulder. "Elena, you're trusting the wrong person. You have no idea who that man really is." "She knows exactly who I am," Cole said. "Question is, who are you?" Outside, headlights swept across the rain-streaked windows. 3 motorcycles rumbled into the gravel lot, engines cutting off one by one. Through the glass, Elena could see men in leather vests climbing off, shaking rain from their jackets, laughing about something as they headed for the door. Damian's eyes moved to the window, then back to Cole, then to Elena. Something in his expression flickered, calculation giving way to retreat. "This isn't over," he said quietly. Then, softer, meant only for her, "Sophia would want you to be careful, Elena. Careful of the wrong people." He turned and walked out just as the bell jingled again, 3 more riders filing past him without a glance, boots heavy on the tile floor. The door swung shut. Through the window, Elena watched the black sedan pull out of the lot and vanish into the rain. The air seemed to leave her lungs all at once. Her hands were shaking again, worse now that the danger had passed. Cole eased back down into the booth beside her, no longer holding her, just close enough that she could feel the solid warmth of him. "You all right?" he asked. "He hurt you? Touch you at all?" "No," she managed. "No, he just watches. He waits." Cole studied her for a long moment, like he was deciding whether to believe her, then shrugged out of his leather jacket and settled it over her shoulders. It smelled like rain and engine oil and something like wood smoke. "You're freezing," he said simply. "Keep it." Around them, the diner had gone quiet. The elderly couple stared. The waitress had frozen mid-pour, coffee pot tilted, forgotten. Even the three bikers who'd just walked in slowed near the counter, watching. Elena caught the waitress's eye, saw the disbelief there, and understood. The man everyone in this diner had been quietly afraid of 5 minutes ago was now the gentlest presence in the room. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's going on," Cole said, his voice low, meant only for her now. "And even after that, I'm not just leaving you out here alone." Elena wrapped her hands around the coffee cup the waitress had brought without being asked, just to have something to hold on to that wasn't shaking. "My sister Sophia died 8 months ago," she said. "They said she fell from the pedestrian bridge over Miller Creek. An accident. Wet railing, bad footing. That's what the report said." Cole didn't say anything. He just watched her, the same steady way he'd watched Damien, like he had all the time in the world to hear whatever came next. "I don't believe it was an accident," Elena said. "Sophia wasn't clumsy. She'd walked that bridge 100 times, and 2 weeks before she died, she told me she found something. Proof that money was being stolen from Haven Bridge, the charity we both worked for. She said she'd hidden it somewhere safe." "That the charity that does the shelters, emergency housing?" Elena nodded, surprised he knew it. "You've heard of it?" "Around," Cole said, which told her nothing, but she didn't press. "Sophia was seeing Damien Cross for almost 2 years," Elena went on. He was controlling. Checked her phone, showed up places he wasn't invited, got angry when she talked to other men, even her co-workers. She finally left him about 4 months before she died. I think he stole the money. I think Sophia found out, and I think he found out that she knew. And you think he pushed her?" Hearing it said plainly made Elena's stomach turn. "I don't know. I don't have proof. But now I have Lily, my niece, Sophia's daughter. She's 8. And Damien's been following me for 2 days, watching my office, waiting outside the courthouse. I finally filed for permanent guardianship today, and he was right there in the parking lot." Cole was quiet for a moment, turning his own coffee cup slowly on the table. "Man back there didn't come at you," he said finally. "Didn't grab you, didn't raise his voice. Said your name like he actually knew you. Tried to warn you about something instead of threatening you outright. That doesn't fit real neat with a man who pushed somebody off a bridge." "You don't believe me?" "Didn't say that," Cole said, meeting her eyes. "Said it doesn't fit neat. Different thing. Man can be dangerous and still not be lying when he says he wants to talk. Both things can be true. I just think you ought to keep your eyes open in every direction, not just his." Elena hadn't thought of it that way, and the idea unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. "Lily's at her after-school program," she said suddenly. "I need to call, make sure she's all right. My phone's dead." Cole slid his phone across the table without a word. She dialed the number for Miss Patterson's program from memory, and after 4 rings, a cheerful voice answered. Lily was fine. Coloring at a table with 2 other kids. No sign of anyone strange near the building. Elena's shoulders dropped an inch with relief. "Thank you," she said, handing the phone back. "I'll follow you home," Cole said. Not asking permission, just telling you what I'm doing. But everything after that, what you do, who you call, whether you want me anywhere near this, that's yours to decide. Not mine." Something in his plainness settled her more than reassurance would have. As they stood to leave, Elena noticed him catch the waitress's eye. "Thanks, Donna," he said, and the older woman smiled like she'd been waiting all night for someone to remember her name. Cole paused at the register, said something quiet to the cashier, and Elena watched as he paid for the elderly couple's dinner without a word to them, sliding a folded bill toward Donna after that made her eyebrows lift. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. Elena climbed into her car, still wearing his jacket, and pulled out of the lot with Cole's motorcycle rumbling to life behind her. She watched him in her mirror the whole drive, steady and unhurried, always 3 car lengths back. It should have frightened her, being followed again, but instead it felt like the first solid ground she'd stood on all day. She never noticed the gray SUV 2 cars behind him, holding the same careful distance all the way to her street. The sky had gone the color of a bruise by the time Elena turned onto her street, streaks of orange bleeding through the clouds low on the horizon. Her small house sat where it always did, third from the corner, porch light already glowing on its automatic timer. It looked exactly the same as it did every evening. That was what made her uneasy, though she couldn't have said why. Behind her, Cole's motorcycle slowed, and in her mirror she watched him glance back once, twice, at something behind them both. She didn't see what it was until she pulled into her driveway and the gray SUV rolled past on the street, unhurried, its windows tinted too dark to see the driver. It didn't slow down. It didn't speed up. It just kept going, like it had somewhere else to be. Cole cut his engine and swung off the bike before Elena had even opened her car door. "You get a look at the plate?" she asked. "Enough of it," he said. His voice was flat, the same tone he used for everything, but his eyes stayed on the corner long after the SUV had turned and disappeared. He pulled a pen from his jacket pocket, the one Elena was still wearing, and wrote 3 letters and 2 numbers on the back of his hand. "Might be nothing. Man in a hurry to get home. But I don't like coincidences much." They walked up the path together, and that was when Elena noticed the gate. Her back gate, the one that led to the small yard where Lily's bicycle leaned against the fence, stood open. Not wide open, just enough. Elena always latched it. She latched it out of habit, the same way she double-checked the stove and the locks, because habits were the only armor she had left since Sophia died. "Stay behind me," Cole said, and there was no argument in his voice this time, only instruction. Elena did as she was told. The back door was unlocked, too. Not broken, not forced, just unlocked, the knob turning easy under Cole's hand. He pushed it open slowly and stepped inside first, his body blocking the doorway until he was sure the kitchen was empty. Nothing looked stolen. The television was still on its stand. Her laptop still sat closed on the counter. Her grandmother's silver still sat in the drawer where it always had. But in the hallway closet, 3 of Sophia's boxes had been pulled out and left open, their flaps bent back, papers and old photographs scattered across the floor like someone had gone through them in a hurry and hadn't cared about putting anything back. Elena's chest went tight. "Lily's room," she said, and didn't wait for Cole this time. She ran. The window was open, not broken, just open. The curtain lifting gently in the evening breeze like nothing was wrong at all. Elena's hands shook as she crossed the small room, and it was Cole who lifted the edge of the pillow first, because Elena couldn't make herself do it. The note was folded once, plain paper, block letters in pen pressed hard enough to nearly tear through. "Stop looking, or the child pays." Elena made a sound she didn't recognize as her own voice. "She's fine," Cole said immediately, already pulling his phone from his pocket. "She's at Miss Patterson's. She's fine, Elena, look at me." She did, because his voice gave her nothing to hold on to but itself, and it was steady enough to stand on. "I'm calling a friend. He's going to go get her right now, and he's not going to let her out of his sight until we know what's happening." He dialed without waiting for her answer, and put the phone to his ear. "Doc, need a favor. Kid pickup, Miss Patterson's after-school program, corner of 5th and Alder. Name's Lily Morales, she'll be with the other kids coloring. Get her, keep her calm, bring her to Elena's. Yeah. Now." He paused, listening. "Two others too, quiet, just eyes on the block. Something's not right." He hung up and looked at Elena, who was still holding the note like it might change if she stared at it long enough. "We're not staying here tonight," he said. "But first we wait for her to get home safe. Then we figure out what somebody was looking for." Elena nodded, though her mind had already caught on something else. Something small that snagged at the edge of her fear. The boxes in the hallway? Sophia's things? Someone had been searching, and they hadn't found what they wanted. Full dark had settled over the street by the time headlights swept across the living room curtains. Elena was at the door before the engine even stopped, and she didn't wait for Doc to knock before she pulled it open. Lily came through first, backpack still on, cheeks pink from the cold, a coloring page clutched in one hand like a trophy. She looked up at Elena with the easy trust of a child who had no idea anything was wrong, and Elena's whole body nearly buckled with relief. Behind her, a broad man in his 50s climbed the porch steps at an unhurried pace, a gray beard trimmed close and a calm, watchful face that reminded Elena a little of Cole, though softer somehow, gentler at the edges. He wore a leather vest like Cole's, patches sewn along the front, but he moved like a man who spent more time listening than talking. "Doc," Cole said, and the two men exchanged a look that passed for a handshake between them. "She's good," Doc said quietly, for Elena's ears more than Lily's. "Talked my ear off the whole way about her drawing. Kept an eye on the street the whole time, too. Nobody followed us." Elena knelt down and pulled Lily into a hug, breathing in the smell of crayons and the cold night air still clinging to her jacket. "Hi, baby," she said, keeping her voice light, the way she'd practiced in her head 100 times since Sophia died. "You have a good day?" "I made a picture of a horse," Lily said, holding it up. "Miss Patterson said the legs looked too long, but I think horses just have long legs." "They do," Elena agreed, and managed something close to a real smile. Cole crouched down too, resting his forearms on his knees so he was at Lily's eye level. Elena had noticed he did that, made himself smaller and slower around her, like he understood without being told that a child needed a different kind of steady than an adult did. "Hey, Lily," he said. "I'm a friend of your aunt's. Name's Cole." Lily studied him with the frank, unembarrassed curiosity only children seemed to manage anymore. "You have a motorcycle?" "I do." "Doc has one too. He let me sit on it in the parking lot, but he said we couldn't turn it on." "Rules are rules," Doc said solemnly, and Lily giggled. Cole's expression stayed easy, warm even, but Elena could hear the careful choosing of words underneath it when he spoke again. "Listen, Lily, your aunt and I found out there's a little bit of a safety problem with the house tonight. Nothing for you to worry about, but we're gonna go stay somewhere else for a bit, just until we get it sorted out. That okay with you?" Lily considered this with the seriousness of a much older person. "Like a sleepover?" "Exactly like a sleepover," Cole said. "Can Doc come?" "Doc's gonna help keep an eye on things," Cole said, "but maybe he'll come see you tomorrow." Satisfied, Lily nodded and turned back to Elena. Can I bring Mama's box, the one with the recipes? Elena went very still. What box, sweetheart? The wooden one, Lily said like it was obvious. I got it out of the closet last week because it still smells like her cinnamon bread when you open it. I've been keeping it under my bed. Elena's heart thudded hard against her ribs. Under your bed? Sweetheart, I thought it was still in the hall closet. I moved it, Lily said, like it was the simplest thing in the world. It's under the board games. I didn't want you to be sad if you saw it. Cole looked at Elena over the top of Lily's head, and something passed between them. A silent agreement that this mattered more than either of them wanted to say out loud in front of the little girl. Let's go find it, Elena said, keeping her voice gentle. They went up the stairs together, Lily leading the way with the confidence of someone who had done this before, alone, in the quiet hours when grief made a person do strange, tender things. She pulled open her closet door and knelt down, shoving aside a stack of board games with the ease of practice until a plain wooden box came into view, its corners worn smooth, a faded floral pattern painted across the lid. Elena's throat tightened at the sight of it. Sophia had painted that box herself, years ago, back when she still believed she'd have time to teach Lily every recipe inside it. Doc lingered in the doorway, giving them room, but Cole crouched beside Lily and lifted the box carefully, like it might break, and carried it down to the kitchen table. Elena opened the lid with shaking hands. Inside were the recipe cards, just as Lily had said, handwritten in Sophia's looping cursive, stained with old flour and butter. Elena ran her fingers over them, throat aching, until her fingers caught on something odd. The bottom of the box didn't sit flush the way it should have. There's a gap, she said quietly. Cole leaned closer as Elena pressed along the seam until a small panel gave way, revealing a shallow compartment beneath the recipe cards. Inside sat a small digital recorder, black and plain, the kind you could buy at any drugstore. Elena stared at it like it might vanish if she looked away. Lily, she said, forcing her voice to stay light. How about you go help Doc make some hot chocolate? I think we've got marshmallows in the cabinet. Lily's eyes lit up despite everything. Real marshmallows? Real marshmallows, Doc said, already steering her towards the stove with an easy hand on her shoulder. I make the best hot chocolate this side of the county. Ask anybody. Doc's hot chocolate has a secret ingredient, Cole added, playing along, and Lily's questions about what it could be faded down the hallway as Doc distracted her with exaggerated stories. When they were alone, Elena pressed play with a finger that wouldn't quite stay steady. Sophia's voice filled the kitchen, warm and familiar, and Elena had to grip the edge of the table to keep from crumbling right there. If you're listening to this, Elena, I'm sorry. I should have told you sooner. A pause, the sound of Sophia exhaling. Damien didn't steal from Haven Bridge. He found the transfers before I did, actually, weird ones, going out to accounts that didn't match any of our vendors. He's been helping me trace them. I know what you think of him, and I know why, but he's not who you believe he is anymore. Elena's hand flew to her mouth. The person doing this isn't some stranger, Sophia continued. It's somebody everyone trusts, somebody powerful, somebody close enough to know what I'm doing before I do it. That's what scares me most. I can't say the name yet, not until I'm sure, but Elena, don't trust appearances. Trust the people who stay when it costs them something. A soft, broken laugh. Damien promised me he'd watch over Lily if anything happened to me. I know that sounds strange coming from me, of all people, but I believe him. The recording clicked toward its end. I'm meeting with a state investigator soon. I'll have real proof by then. If something happens before that, look at the people everyone else stopped questioning a long time ago. The recording went silent. Elena sat frozen, the recorder still in her palm, her sister's voice ringing in the empty kitchen air like something she could reach out and touch if she tried hard enough. Cole's phone buzzed on the counter. He answered it fast, listened, and his jaw tightened. "He's here," Cole said, lowering the phone. "Damien. Alone. End of the driveway, hands where the boys can see them. Says he wants one chance to explain why he was following you." Elena's hand trembled on the recorder as she rose from the table. She followed Cole to the front window and watched him step outside into the porch light, his broad frame filling the doorway before the door clicked shut behind him. Damien stood at the end of the driveway, exactly where Cole's men had told him to stay. The rain had stopped, but his dark coat was still damp, clinging to his shoulders. He looked smaller than Elena remembered him, less like the man who used to make her skin crawl, and more like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Phone and keys," Cole said, his voice even but firm. "On the ground. Now." Damien didn't argue. He reached into his coat slowly, pulled out his phone, and set it down along with his car keys. Then he lifted his arms without being asked. Cole patted him down with quick, practiced hands, checking his coat, his waistband, the inside of his boots. He found nothing but a folded manila envelope tucked against Damien's ribs. "What's this?" Cole asked, pulling it free. "Proof," Damien said. "Look inside if you want. I'm not here to hurt anyone." Cole opened the envelope and thumbed through a stack of papers. Elena watched through the gap in the curtains, her pulse hammering, as Cole's expression shifted from suspicion to something more careful. "Talk," Cole said. "You've got exactly as long as it takes me to decide whether to call this in." Damien nodded, his hands still raised slightly at his sides. "I was controlling with Sophia. Jealous? I checked her phone. I showed up places I wasn't invited. I made her feel like she couldn't breathe without me knowing where she was." His voice cracked slightly. "She ended it. Best decision she ever made. She told me I needed help, real help, and she wouldn't speak to me again until I got it." "Did you?" Cole asked. 6 months of counseling before she'd even take my calls again, Damien said. "It wasn't about getting her back. She made that clear. But I kept going because I didn't like who I'd been. When she found those transfers at Haven Bridge, weird ones, she came to me because she knew I understood finances. I helped her trace them. That's all I ever did for her after that." "Help." Elena's fingers curled against the door frame. Sophia's voice from the recording echoed in her mind. "He's not who you believe he is anymore." "The papers," Cole said, holding up the envelope. "Receipts," Damien said. "School lunch payments, counseling sessions for Lily, winter coats, boots, a tutor for math because her teacher said she was falling behind after Sophia died. I paid for all of it anonymously. I didn't want credit. I made a promise to Sophia, and I kept it." Cole flipped through the pages slowly, checking dates, checking names, his jaw tight the whole time. "Why follow Elena?" he asked. "Because I saw someone watching her outside the courthouse," Damien said. "A man I recognized. He's done contract work for Haven Bridge before, security stuff, nothing official. I knew if I called Elena and warned her, she wouldn't believe a word out of my mouth. So I followed her instead. I wasn't going to let something happen to her without trying to stop it." Elena stepped forward and unlocked the door, pushing it open just enough to stand in the gap. Cole glanced back at her, silently asking if she wanted to take over. She nodded and stepped out onto the porch, the cold air biting at her skin. I'm not forgiving you, she said, her voice steady despite everything shaking inside her. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. But I believe you cared for Lily. I believe that part. Damien's shoulders sagged with something like relief, though his eyes stayed heavy with guilt. That's more than I expected. Cole stepped closer, holding the envelope out until Damien took it back. Changing doesn't erase what you did to her, Cole said. It doesn't buy back the fear you put in Sophia, or the months Elena spent thinking you were a threat. I know, Damien said quietly. I'm not asking it to. He glanced towards the house, then back at Elena, his expression tightening with something urgent. There's something else, he said. Sophia had a name. Someone she suspected long before she died. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Margaret Vale, Damien said. The name hung in the cold air like something none of them wanted to touch. Margaret Vale, Elena repeated, shaking her head. No, that's not possible. I know how it sounds, Damien said. You don't understand. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, though the chill wasn't the only reason she was shaking. She held my hand at Sophia's funeral. She helped me file the guardianship papers when I didn't even know where to start. She calls Lily her brave little sunshine. She's not some criminal, Damien. She's the kindest person I know. That's exactly what makes it work, Cole said quietly. Elena turned to him, ready to argue, but something in his steady gaze made her stop. Bring the papers inside, Cole said to Damien. All of it. Let's lay it out and look before anybody decides what's true. They spread everything across Elena's kitchen table. The recorder sat in the center, its small red light dark now, but Sophia's voice still seemed to linger in the room. Damien unfolded a stack of bank statements, pointing to columns of numbers that meant little to Elena at first glance. These are transfers, he said. Routed through 3 shell companies, Sunrise Family Services, Bridgeway Holdings, Clearwater Assistance Fund. Sound official, don't they? They're not. I traced the addresses. 2 are empty storage units. One's a mailbox at a shipping store 2 towns over. And you found this how? Elena asked. Sophia showed me the first oddity, Damien said. After that, I kept digging on my own. She didn't want me involved more than necessary. She was trying to protect me, I think, or protect herself from trusting me too much again. He swallowed. The last withdrawals came right before she died. And look here. He slid a second folder toward Elena. Falsified invoices. My name on contractor work I never did. Someone built a paper trail pointing straight at me in case anyone ever asked questions. Elena stared at the signature on the invoice. It wasn't her own handwriting, but it was close enough to Damien's that she understood immediately how convincing it would look to anyone not paying close attention. Someone planned this, she whispered. Someone with access to Haven Bridge's accounts, Cole said. Someone who could move money and reshape records without anyone questioning her. Elena's mind flashed back to the note beneath Lily's pillow. Stop looking, or the child pays. She said the words aloud, and Cole's jaw tightened. I've heard that phrase before, he said, at a Haven Bridge fundraiser last year. Margaret was talking about budget shortfalls, about how careless spending trickles down and hurts the families who need help most. She said, word for word, when we fail to manage this correctly, the child pays. I remember it because it struck me as an odd thing to say in a room full of donors. Elena's stomach turned. That could be a coincidence? Could be, Cole agreed. But I don't like coincidences that show up outside your daughter's window. Damien leaned forward. There's more. Sophia told me 2 days before she died that she'd arranged to meet someone. A state investigator, she said. Someone who'd been quietly looking into nonprofit fraud in the county. She wouldn't tell me who set up the meeting, only that it was happening the night she died. She never made it. Silence settled over the kitchen. Elena pressed her fingers to her eyes. "There's one more thing," Cole said. "That gray sedan following us earlier. I ran the plate through a friend who still works dispatch. It's registered to Crestline Security Solutions." "Haven Bridge contracts with them," Elena said numbly, "for event security. Margaret hired them herself." Nobody spoke for a long moment. The weight of it pressed down on the room like a held breath. Then Elena's phone rang, sharp and sudden in the quiet kitchen. Margaret's name lit up the screen. Elena's hand hovered over it before she answered, forcing warmth into her voice. "Margaret? It's late." I know, forgive me," Margaret said, bright and easy as always. "I just couldn't wait to tell you. The board wants to honor Sophia at Sunday's gala, a memorial award, and we'd love for Lily to accept it. Would you bring Sophia's old recipe box? I thought we could display a few pages, something personal, something warm." Elena's throat went dry. Nobody outside this room knew where that recorder had been hidden. "Of course," she heard herself say. "We'll be there." She ended the call and looked at Cole, her hands trembling again. "She knows," she whispered. "She knows exactly where I found it." Cole reached across the table and took her hand, steady and sure. "Nobody gets to Lily," he said. "Not without going through me first." Elena nodded, drawing a shaky breath, and began, at last, to plan. The rain had not let up by the time the sky turned from black to gray. Elena stood in Lily's doorway at 5 a.m, watching two men she barely knew fold small T-shirts into a duffel bag with more care than she expected. "You don't have to do that," Elena said. The younger one, a wiry writer named Presley, looked up and shrugged. "Doc says fold them so they don't wrinkle. Something about a kid feeling normal even when nothing else is." Doc himself came up the stairs a moment later, carrying Lily's backpack and a stack of folders from her school desk. "Grabbed her homework folder, too," he said. "Figured she'd want that math workbook she was complaining about. Kids like complaining about normal things. Keeps them steady." Elena hadn't thought of it that way, but she nodded, grateful. Lily herself was already dressed, clutching Sophia's recipe box against her chest like it might float away if she let go. Cole crouched down to her eye level near the front door. "You're gonna ride with Doc in his truck," Cole said. "Nice and warm, heater on high. I'll follow right behind on the bike." "Is it because of the bad man?" Lily asked. Cole didn't flinch from the question. "It's because some people don't know how to be trusted with things they're given. That's all you need to know right now. You're safe. That part isn't changing." Lily studied him a moment, then nodded slowly, the way she did when she decided something was true. The apartment above Cole's repair shop was small, but it did not feel bare. Bookshelves lined one wall, crowded with paperbacks and a few worn hardcovers about motorcycle engines. The cupboards, when Elena opened them out of nervous habit, were stocked with cereal, cans of soup, and a jar of peanut butter with a handwritten sticky note that just said, "Lily," taped to the front. Someone had thought of that before they'd even arrived. On the wall near the window hung a single framed photograph. A younger Cole, hair a little darker, stood beside a woman with laughing eyes and wind-blown hair, both of them squinting into the sun. Elena didn't ask. She understood without needing to. "You and Lily take the bedroom," Cole said, setting the last box down by the closet. "I'll take the office downstairs. Doc's got the couch tonight, and Presley's on the first watch outside." "Cole, this is your home. You don't have to give up your bed?" "Already decided," he said, in a tone that made clear the matter was closed. Rotating shifts start tonight. Somebody's awake and watching the street every hour, every night, until this is finished. Elena sat at the small kitchen table once he'd gone downstairs to unload the recorder from its hiding spot in his saddlebag. She watched him make 3 copies onto separate drives, sealing each one in a different envelope. One he mailed to Doc's sister in another town. One he gave to Damien to carry. The last he kept taped beneath a floorboard in the office. "Belt and suspenders," he said when he caught her watching. "Never trust one copy of anything that matters." By 7, Elena was on the phone with Lily's school, her voice steady even though her hands were not. "Family emergency," she explained. "We'll need remote assignments through Monday, if that's possible." The secretary on the other end didn't ask questions, just promised to email the material within the hour. When she hung up, she found Lily curled on the small couch with one of Cole's paperbacks open on her lap, though she wasn't really reading it. Doc sat nearby, showing her how to tie a fishing knot with a spare bootlace, patient as anything, like there was nowhere else in the world he needed to be. The storm broke sometime near mid-morning. Sunlight slanted through the window, catching dust in the air and warming the old wood floor. Elena stood at the window with a cup of coffee someone had made for her, watching Presley outside, leaning against his bike near the shop's entrance, eyes scanning the street like he'd been doing it his whole life. These were men who had nothing to gain from any of this. They didn't know Lily's favorite color or what songs made her laugh. They had simply shown up, folded her clothes, stocked a cupboard, and given up their own beds without being asked twice. Elena thought of every worried glance she'd once given a leather vest crossing the street, every assumption she'd carried without knowing it. She looked at the men outside, at Doc's patient hands teaching a knot, at Cole's quiet certainty holding the whole fragile morning together, and she understood, with a clarity that surprised her, exactly how wrong she had been. Elena waited until Lily was busy with Doc's fishing knots before she stepped into the small office and dialed the Haven Bridge front desk. Her stomach turned as the phone rang. She had rehearsed the words twice already, but they still felt heavy on her tongue. "Haven Bridge Foundation. This is Margaret." "Margaret, it's Elena." She made her voice sound tired, which wasn't hard. "I'm not feeling well. I think I picked up something in the rain yesterday. I'm going to stay home today, but I'll be in tomorrow to help with the gala setup." "Oh, you poor thing." Margaret's voice softened into the warm, motherly tone Elena used to find so comforting. "Don't you worry about a single thing here. Just rest up. We need you sharp for tomorrow, not sick." "I will, thank you." There was a pause, just long enough for Elena's pulse to quicken. "Elena, dear, I've been thinking about Sophia's things," Margaret said almost carelessly, the way someone might mention the weather. "Did you happen to find that old recipe box of hers? I remember she used to bring cinnamon bread to the office. I thought it might be sweet to display some of her recipes at the gala, a little tribute." Elena's fingers tightened around the phone. She kept her voice light. "I found it, actually. Lily's been using it, but it's really just recipes. Nothing special. Handwritten cards, some grease stains, nothing gala-worthy." "Well, isn't that just like Sophia?" Margaret said warmly. "Keeping things simple. Get some rest, dear. I'll see you tomorrow." Elena hung up and sat very still for a moment, feeling the lie settle in her chest like a stone. She had barely stepped back into the kitchen when a car door slammed outside, followed by brisk, determined footsteps. Ruth Bennett appeared in the doorway a minute later, her silver hair damp from the drizzle, her mouth set in a thin line of worry. "I heard you were staying here," Ruth said, glancing around the apartment as though she expected to find something scandalous. "With bikers, Elena. Hell's Angels." "Ruth, it's not what you think." "I'm not judging your safety," Ruth said, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I'm thinking about your reputation, about the charity's reputation. If people see you associating with men like that right before the gala, it could undo everything we're trying to build." "People talk, Elena. People assume." Cole, who had been quietly working on his laptop at the table, said nothing. He simply stood, grabbed his jacket, and walked outside without a word of argument. Through the window, Elena watched him crouch beside Ruth's old sedan, popping the hood after noticing it had refused to start earlier that morning. He worked with quiet efficiency, testing wires, cleaning corroded terminals, swapping in a battery from his own supply. Ruth stood at the window, arms crossed, watching him with visible discomfort. When Cole finished, he wiped his hands on a rag and gave the car door a light pat. "Should start fine now," he said simply. "Battery was old. This one'll get you through winter." "What do I owe you?" Ruth asked, clearly startled. "Nothing," Cole said. "Just drive safe." He walked back inside without waiting for her response, and Ruth stood there a long moment, staring at her now humming engine before slowly turning back toward the apartment, some of her certainty visibly shaken. By early afternoon, Elena sat hunched over her laptop with Damien on a video call, the two of them scrolling through spreadsheets of transfers and donor records. Meanwhile, across the room, Cole and Doc pored over a printout of a license plate number, cross-referencing it with an online records search. "Got him," Doc said finally, tapping the screen. "Victor Shaw, private security contractor, runs a small outfit 2 counties over. Expensive too. Not the kind of guy you hire for parking lot patrol." Cole studied the name, jaw tightening. "Somebody's paying him well to follow a grieving family." That evening, dinner was simple, canned soup and buttered bread, but the table felt full in a way expensive meals rarely did. Lily sat cross-legged in her chair, notebook open beside her plate, pencil moving carefully across the page. "What are you writing?" Elena asked. "Good things people do," Lily said, as if it were obvious. She turned the notebook around to show them. Beneath today's date, she had written, "Cole fixed Miss Ruth's car even though she was scared of him. He didn't have to." Cole read the words upside down, and something shifted behind his eyes. He stood abruptly, turning toward the sink, busying his hands with a dish that didn't need washing. Elena watched his shoulders, the way they trembled just slightly before going still again, and she understood exactly how deeply the child's simple gratitude had reached him. After Lily fell asleep, curled around a stuffed rabbit with her notebook tucked under her pillow, Elena crept back down the narrow staircase that led to the repair shop. She hadn't meant to spy. She only wanted a glass of water. But the soft yellow light spilling from beneath the shop door stopped her. She pushed it open slowly. Cole sat on a low stool in the middle of the garage, a single work lamp glowing above him. In front of him stood an old motorcycle, its frame stripped down to bare metal in most places, but the gas tank gleamed like something precious. He was polishing it with a soft cloth, slow, careful circles, the way a person might clean something that could break if handled wrong. "Couldn't sleep either?" Elena asked quietly. Cole didn't jump. He never seemed to jump at anything. He just looked up, and for a moment, something raw passed behind his eyes before he covered it with a small, tired smile. "Come in," he said. "Watch your step. Tools everywhere." Elena picked her way across the concrete floor and sat on an overturned crate near him. She studied the tank under the lamplight. It was deep green, with a small hand-painted design near the cap. Faded roses, delicate and old-fashioned. "It's beautiful," she said. "It was hers." Cole's voice was low, rough at the edges. "Rebecca's," Elena went very still. She had heard the name before, in passing, in the careful way the other riders avoided saying too much. But she had never heard Cole speak it himself. "My wife," he said, setting the cloth down gently on his knee. "She's been gone 6 years now." "I'm sorry," Elena said. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to." "I want to." He looked at the tank instead of her, like it was easier that way. "She left an abusive marriage before I ever met her. Ran in the middle of winter with nothing but a duffel bag and whatever cash she had hidden. She tried to get into an emergency shelter that night. They turned her away, said they didn't have beds, said to try again in the morning." Elena's chest tightened. She already knew, somehow, where this story was going. "She slept in her car," Cole continued, "below freezing that night. By morning she could barely breathe. Doctors said the pneumonia she caught that winter scarred her lungs bad enough that it never fully healed. Took years off her life. When she got sick again, 6 years ago, her body just didn't have the strength left to fight it." "Cole," Elena whispered. "I met her 2 years after that winter," he said. "Never even knew about the shelter until we'd been married a while. She told me like it was nothing. Like it was just something that happened to her, not something that could have been stopped if one person had cared enough to find her a bed." His jaw tightened. "After she died, I used what savings I had, sold 2 properties I owned outright, and gave it all anonymously to start Haven Bridge. So no woman in this town would ever be turned away in the cold again." Elena felt something crack open inside her chest. "You built it. You built Haven Bridge." "I funded it," Cole corrected quietly. "I never wanted my name on it. Figured a Hell's Angels name attached to a women's shelter would scare off every donor within 100 miles. Better to stay invisible? Let it do good without me getting in the way?" Elena stared at him, and the full weight of it settled over her like a physical thing. Margaret hadn't just stolen from strangers, from frightened mothers and homeless children. She had stolen from this. From Rebecca. From the last gift Cole had given the woman he loved. "She's been stealing from your wife's memory," Elena said softly. "This whole time." Cole's hands went still on the cloth. He didn't answer, but his silence said enough. "I try not to think of it that way," he finally said. "Makes it harder to keep my head level." Elena reached over and touched his forearm, feeling the tension coiled beneath his skin. "I don't know how you've carried this alone." Cole looked at her, then, really looked, and something in his expression cracked open too. "Because loving something else feels like betraying her," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Like moving forward means I'm saying she didn't matter enough to keep me still." "Cole." Elena's voice was gentle but firm. "Loving someone again wouldn't erase her. It would prove she mattered enough to change you into someone capable of loving again." His eyes searched hers, uncertain, hopeful, afraid. Slowly, without either of them deciding it, they leaned closer, the space between them shrinking to almost nothing. A cry broke the silence upstairs, thin and frightened. "Lily!" They both stood at once, the moment breaking gently, and hurried toward the stairs together. Saturday morning came too fast. Elena woke on the small couch in Cole's apartment with a stiff neck and a heart that felt like it hadn't slowed down since the note under Lily's pillow. Downstairs, she could smell coffee and hear low voices. Cole, Doc, and Damien were already at the kitchen table, hunched over a legal pad covered in Cole's blocky handwriting. "Morning," Doc said, sliding a mug toward her. "Sleep okay?" "Not really." Elena sat down and rubbed her eyes. "What's the plan?" Cole tapped the pad. "You go into the office like normal. I come with you same as before. Husband act. We need more than the recording. Detective Price was clear. We need documents that connect Margaret directly to the accounts right now, not 8 months ago. I can get into the shared drive, Elena said. I have access to donor records. If there's something recent, it'll be there. Damien, sitting a little apart from the others, spoke carefully. I'll be ready the second you send anything. I've got a contact who can trace shell companies fast, but I need names. Elena nodded, though her stomach twisted. Trusting Damien still felt like stepping onto ice that might not hold. But she thought of Sophia's voice on the recording, calling him someone she trusted, and she pushed the doubt down. An hour later, she and Cole walked into the Haven Bridge office together. He wore the button-down shirt again, sleeves rolled just enough to hide most of the ink on his forearms. Heads turned anyway. Well, would you look at that? Whispered Carla from the front desk. Not quietly enough. Didn't know Elena got married. Didn't know Elena was dating anyone, someone else murmured. Elena felt her face heat, but Cole simply rested a hand at the small of her back, steady as ever, and steered her toward Margaret's open office door. Margaret rose from her desk immediately, arms out for an embrace that Elena had once treasured and now had to force herself into. Elena, honey, and Cole, wonderful to see you both again. Her smile was warm, practiced, and utterly convincing. I have to say, I'm so pleased. After everything you've been through this year, it does my heart good to see you've finally found some stability. Thank you, Margaret, Elena managed. Cole stepped in smoothly, drawing Margaret's attention like he'd been trained for it his whole life. I've been meaning to ask you about the gala seating, he said. Elena mentioned the Foundation's board wants a specific arrangement for donors. Mind walking me through it? I want to make sure I don't embarrass her. Margaret laughed, delighted, and gestured him toward the framed seating chart on her wall, already explaining donor tiers and table placement. Elena slipped down the hallway to her old desk, heart hammering. She logged into the shared drive with fingers that trembled only slightly, pulled up the donor transaction folder, and began scrolling. Most of it looked ordinary. Then she found a subfolder marked Q3 Adjustments, buried 3 layers deep. Inside were transfer records to companies she didn't recognize: Meridian Housing Partners, Willow Grove Holdings, Bright Path Family Trust. Each one had an approval form attached, signed with Margaret's looping signature, though something about the ink looked too uniform, too recent, like it had been printed rather than written. Her breath caught. She recognized the names woven into the shell companies. Willow Grove. That had been the last name of a woman named Renata Willow, who'd stayed at Haven Bridge 2 winters ago with her 2 kids. Bright Path had been the nickname a shelter resident named Pia had given her own daughter. Margaret had built her theft entirely out of the identities of women she was supposed to protect. Elena's stomach turned, but she forced her hands steady and used her phone to photograph each page, one by one. When she finished, she texted the 3 company names to Damien with shaking fingers, then closed the folder and logged out. Back in Margaret's office, Cole was still nodding along about table centerpieces. He caught Elena's eye for half a second, just long enough to see the small nod that meant she had what they needed. We should get going, Elena said, forcing lightness into her voice. Cole has an appointment. Margaret hugged her once more at the door, warm as ever. Give my love to that beautiful niece of yours. They walked out through the lobby, past the Whispers, into the parking lot. Elena didn't breathe easy until they were in the truck. Her phone buzzed almost immediately. Damien. Confirmed, Bright Path Family Trust financed a lake house. Titles in Margaret's brother's name. 6 months ago. Elena showed Cole the screen. His jaw tightened, but he only started the engine. Behind them, in the office window 2 floors up, Margaret stood watching their truck pull away, her smile gone, her eyes narrowed with something sharp and calculating. The repair shop smelled like motor oil and coffee when Elena and Cole walked in. Damien was already there, spreading printouts across the workbench, pushing aside a socket wrench to make room. "Lake house is worth about $400,000, he said, not looking up. "Bought in cash 6 months ago. Titles under Robert Vale, Margaret's brother. But look at the payment trail." He slid a paper toward Elena. Bright Path Family Trust wired the down payment. Willow Grove covered 2 renovation loans that never got repaid. Meridian Housing Partners paid the property taxes this spring. Elena stared at the numbers until they blurred. She used their names to buy her brother a house. She used their names to buy her self-deniability, Damien said. If anyone ever traced the shell companies, it would look like housing assistants. Like she was helping people, not stealing from them. Cole crossed his arms, jaw tight. "Call the detective." Elena's hands shook as she dialed. Detective Hannah Price picked up on the second ring, and Elena talked fast, laying out the recording, the shell companies, the property records, the forged signatures. She could hear papers shuffling on the other end. "Send me everything you have," Price said. "But Elena, listen to me. A recording of your sister making accusations isn't proof. It's a lead, and copied documents, no matter how damning they look, can be challenged in court. Defense attorneys will say you or Damien altered them, especially with his connection to the case. I need originals. I need someone who can testify from the inside that these transfers were unauthorized." Elena's stomach dropped. "So none of this matters?" "It matters. It's just not enough yet." Price's voice softened slightly. "Get me something more and get me somebody with first-hand knowledge who'll sit in a room and say Margaret told them to sign something they shouldn't have." The bell over the shop door jingled before Elena could respond. Ruth stepped inside, clutching her purse to her chest, looking like she hadn't slept. "Elena, I need to see something," Ruth said, breathless. "Doc called me, said you found transfer authorizations. Can I look?" Elena spread the photographed pages across the workbench. Ruth's eyes moved down the columns until she stopped, her finger trembling as it landed on a signature line beneath the Bright Path transfer. "That's my signature," Ruth whispered. "Ruth, that's my signature, Elena, but I never signed this." Ruth's face had gone pale. "Margaret used to hand me stacks of attendance sheets during board meetings. Blank ones," she said, "for the volunteer hour logs. She'd tell me to sign at the bottom so she could fill in the hours later and save time." Ruth pressed a hand to her mouth. "She copied my signature onto authorization forms. I signed my own name onto lies." Cole spoke gently. "You didn't know." "That doesn't make it feel any less like betrayal." Ruth's voice cracked, but her spine straightened. 15 years I have given that woman my trust." Elena reached for her hand. "Ruth, I need your help. The archived board minutes, the real ones. If Margaret forged approvals, there has to be a record somewhere showing the board never actually voted on these transfers. I still have my old volunteer badge. I can get into the archive room." Ruth wiped her eyes, steadying herself. "What else?" "The gala is tomorrow night," Elena said carefully. "Detective Price needs someone Margaret trusts to get her talking. Someone wearing a recorder." Ruth went quiet for a long moment, staring down at the forged signature bearing her name. Then she straightened her shoulders. "I have known that woman 15 years, Ruth said, and her voice, though still shaking, held something hard and resolute underneath it. She sat in my kitchen, she ate at my table, and she made me sign my name to lies that stole from women who trusted us to protect them. I am embarrassed, Elena. I am ashamed I didn't see it. But my embarrassment is not going to stop me from doing what's right. Tell your detective I'll wear whatever she wants me to wear. Price, still on speakerphone, spoke up. I'll get the recording equipment approved and start coordinating surveillance placement for the gala tonight. I'll need Ruth for a briefing this evening. We'll be there, Elena said. After she hung up, Cole looked between the two women, his expression grim. Tomorrow's the gala. That gives Margaret almost a full day to figure out we're onto her. He glanced toward the window, toward the darkening afternoon light. If she's as smart as she's dangerous, she won't wait for Sunday to make her move. Upstairs in the small apartment above the repair shop, Elena laid the dress across Lily's bed. It was pale yellow with tiny white flowers stitched along the collar, the kind of dress a little girl might wear to a spring picnic. Sophia had bought it 3 weeks before she died, tags still hanging from the sleeve. Do you think Mama would want me to wear it to the gala? Lily asked, running her fingers over the fabric. I think she'd want you to wear it everywhere, Elena said, smoothing out a wrinkle near the hem. She picked it because she said yellow looked like sunshine on you. Lily was quiet for a moment, turning the dress over in her small hands. Is Damien going to be there tomorrow? At the gala? Elena sat down on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. Damien is doing something brave tomorrow. He's going to talk to the police, so people believe he's the one who did something wrong. That will help us catch the person who really did it. But he didn't do anything wrong? He did once, Elena said gently. A long time ago, he wasn't kind to your mama. He tried to control her, tried to make her feel small. That was wrong, Lily, and I don't want you to ever think it wasn't. Lily's eyebrows knit together. But he's been nice. He gave me the coat, and the notebook page said he paid for lunch money too. He has been trying to fix the wrong things he did, Elena said, and I believe him when he says he's sorry. But saying sorry doesn't mean everything goes back to normal right away. Trust is something you build back slowly, like stacking blocks one at a time. Forgiveness is a start. It's not the whole building. Lily nodded slowly, like she was turning the words over in her head the way she turned over the dress. Mama's notebook rule, she said. Good things people do still count, even if they did bad things first. That's exactly right, Elena said, and pulled her into a hug. Downstairs, the workbench had turned into something closer to a war room. Damien stood with his arms crossed, looking steadier than Elena had seen him in weeks. I'll turn myself in tomorrow morning, he said. Before the gala. Let it hit the news. Margaret will think her frame worked. She'll think the threat is gone, and she'll relax. Cole shook his head immediately. And if the plan falls apart? If Price doesn't get what she needs from Ruth? You're sitting in a cell while Margaret walks free. I know, Damien said simply. That's not a small risk, Damien. I made Sophia a promise, Damien said, his voice quiet but firm. I told her I'd protect Lily, whatever it cost me. If turning myself in buys us the hours we need, I'll take the cell. I'd rather be in there knowing I kept my word than out here wondering if I could have done more. Cole studied him for a long moment, then nodded once, like he was filing away a piece of respect he hadn't expected to give. Later, after the shop had gone quiet and Lily was asleep upstairs, Elena sat beside Cole on the narrow staircase, 2 mugs of coffee steaming between them. It's strange, Elena said, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. A few days ago, this was pretend. You, me, the whole husband thing. Feels less pretend every day, Cole said. Elena glanced at him. Yeah, it does. He didn't say anything else, just let his shoulder rest against hers, and for a moment the quiet between them felt like something solid. The lights cut out at 11:58. Cole was on his feet before the darkness fully settled, flashlight in hand, moving toward the window. Outside, a shadow sprinted across the back lot toward a car with no headlights, and by the time Cole reached the door, the engine was already fading into the night. Emergency power kicked on 20 minutes later, humming through the building in flickers. Cole checked every window, every lock, then climbed the stairs and sat down in the hallway outside Lily's door. He stayed there until the sun came up. Sunday morning came in gray and quiet, the kind of light that made everything look tired. Elena found Cole exactly where she left him, sitting on the floor outside Lily's door, his back against the wall, eyes red from staying awake all night. She held out a mug of coffee. "You didn't sleep?" "Couldn't." He took the mug, wrapped both hands around it like he needed the warmth more than the drink. "Somebody cut the power on purpose last night. That's not random." "I know." Elena sat down beside him, the floor cold through her jeans. "Today's the day, isn't it? Whatever happens at that gala, it decides everything." Cole looked at her, and for once his face didn't have its usual calm. "Yeah, it does." Neither of them said anything else. They just sat there, shoulders touching, listening to Lily breathe steady and safe behind the door. By 9 that morning, Damien walked into the police station wearing a plain gray suit, no expression on his face except quiet resolve. He sat across from Detective Price and gave a full statement, admitting to the financial questions the news had raised, letting reporters outside snap photos of him being led through the lobby. Every camera in town turned toward him. Nobody was watching Elena. In the afternoon, Ruth drove to the old Haven Bridge storage annex, a cramped room in the basement of the county building smelling like dust and old paper. She pulled box after box of board minutes until her fingers ached. And there, in a folder dated 14 months back, she found it. A transfer authorization with Margaret's signature on the approval line, dated 2 days before the board had even met to discuss it. Ruth stared at the page for a long moment, her hands trembling. 15 years, she murmured to herself. 15 years I trusted her. That evening, Detective Price met Ruth in a quiet parking lot outside the community center. A young officer fitted a small recording device beneath the collar of Ruth's blouse, so tiny it looked like a button. "Just get her talking," Price said. "Don't push. Let her fill the silence." Ruth nodded, jaw tight. "I can do that." By early evening, the Haven Bridge Gala Hall glowed with string lights and soft music, the parking lot filling with expensive cars and nervous excitement. Elena arrived with Lily in her yellow dress, Cole beside her in dark jeans and a clean white shirt, his leather vest worn openly over it, patches catching the light. Ruth and Doc followed close behind. In Elena's bag was a copy of Sophia's recipe box, a plain wooden replica Damien had built the night before, filled with ordinary recipe cards and nothing else. The real recorder and everything it held stayed locked away in a safe deposit box across town, far from anyone who might come looking. Heads turned as they walked in. Whispers followed Cole like a current through the room, women in sequined dresses leaning close to their husbands, eyebrows raised at the sight of a Hell's Angel patch among the tuxedos. Cole didn't flinch. He nodded politely to a passing waiter, held the door for an elderly couple, and kept his hand steady at the small of Elena's back. "They're staring," Elena whispered. "Let them stare," Cole said. "Staring never hurt anybody." The lights dimmed, and Margaret stepped onto the small stage at the front of the ballroom, elegant in deep blue, her smile warm and practiced. She spoke about compassion, about the families Haven Bridge had helped, about protecting children who had nowhere else to turn. Her voice cracked with what looked like real emotion when she mentioned Sophia's name, calling her a light this community lost too soon. Backstage, Lily waited in her yellow dress, clutching the framed photograph of her mother she planned to hold when she accepted the memorial award. Doc stood close beside her, a steady hand on her shoulder. The applause rose as Margaret finished her speech, and she stepped down from the stage, weaving through the crowd of admirers and well-wishers. She found Ruth near the back of the room, taking her gently by the elbow. "Ruth," Margaret said quietly, her voice pitched just for the two of them. "Could I borrow you for a moment? There's something in my office I'd like your opinion on. Won't take long." Ruth's heart pounded beneath the small hidden microphone. She kept her face calm. "Of course, Margaret," she said. "Lead the way." Margaret's office sat behind the ballroom, a small room with framed photos of smiling families on the walls, thank you cards pinned to a corkboard, the whole space built to look like proof of goodness. Ruth stepped inside, and Margaret closed the door softly behind them, the noise of the gala fading to a low hum through the walls. In the surveillance room down the hall, Detective Price sat with headphones pressed to her ears, a young officer beside her watching a small recorder spin. "Steady," Price murmured, though Ruth couldn't hear her. "Just get her talking." Margaret moved to her desk and pulled out a folder. The same folder Ruth had found in the storage annex that afternoon, though Margaret didn't know that yet. "I wanted to ask you about the transfer records from last year," Margaret said, her voice smooth as always. "There's been some confusion. I thought, given your history with the board, you might help me understand where the paperwork went wrong." Ruth kept her hands folded in her lap so they wouldn't shake. "I already found the paperwork, Margaret. Your signature is on an approval dated 2 days before the board ever met to vote on it." Something shifted behind Margaret's eyes, quick as a shadow crossing a wall. "That could be a clerical error." 15 years I've read your minutes," Ruth said quietly. "I know your handwriting. I know your signature. This isn't a clerical error." Margaret set the folder down. For a long moment she said nothing, and when she finally spoke, her voice had lost its polish. "I built this charity, Ruth. Every dollar, every bed, every family we helped, that was my work. Do you understand what it costs to hold something like this together? I redirected money that wasn't being used. Money that would have sat in an account doing nothing. I earned it." "You stole it," Ruth said. "I compensated myself," Margaret snapped, then caught herself, smoothing her voice again. "It doesn't matter now. What matters is what happens next." "What happened to Sophia?" Ruth asked. Margaret's jaw tightened. "Sophia found things she didn't understand. I hired someone to retrieve what she'd taken and to make sure she understood the consequences of talking. That's all. I never told him to hurt her. I never wanted her dead." "Victor Shaw," Ruth said. Margaret's eyes flashed. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough." Margaret leaned forward, her voice dropping low and cold. "Listen to me. If you report any of this, I will release every confidential file in this building, every shelter resident's name, every abuse case, every address. I will destroy the very people you think you're protecting. Is that what you want, Ruth?" The door opened. Detective Price stepped inside with 2 uniformed officers behind her, and Ruth felt the tension leave her shoulders all at once. "Margaret Vale," Price said, "you're under arrest." Margaret's face went pale, then hard, then empty, as the officers moved toward her. Out in the ballroom, Elena stood near the stage, smiling at guests who asked polite, careful questions about the commotion they'd noticed near the back hallway. Everything's fine, she said again and again, her heart hammering beneath her calm voice. Just a small matter with the schedule. Then Lily stepped onto the stage in her yellow dress, holding the framed photograph of Sophia against her chest, and the room quieted. My mom used to say scared people just need someone to remind them they're brave, Lily said, her voice small but steady. She helped a lot of scared people remember that. I think that's the best thing anybody can do. The room broke into applause, warm and real, and Elena wiped her eyes, watching her niece stand taller than she'd ever seen her stand before. Later, outside, beneath the string lights strung along the entrance, Ruth found Cole leaning against his motorcycle, arms crossed, watching the last guests trickle out. I judged you, Ruth said. The first day I saw you, I decided who you were before you said a word. I was wrong, Cole. I'm sorry. Cole nodded once. Takes courage to say that. Lily ran up between them, breathless. You made us feel safe, she said to Cole, even when nobody was watching. Elena looked at Cole, and something in his tired, weathered face finally softened all the way. She reached up, and he met her halfway, and beneath the soft glow of the lights, they kissed, slow and real, the danger of the whole terrible year finally feeling, for one bright moment, over. Elena's phone rang at 7 a.m, pulling her out of the first deep sleep she'd had in weeks. For a moment, lying in the small guest room above Cole's shop, she forgot anything was wrong. Then she saw Detective Price's name on the screen, and her stomach dropped before she even answered. Elena, Price said, and her voice was careful in a way that made Elena's chest go tight. I need you to sit down. What happened? Margaret's attorney got a judge to release her. He's arguing that Ruth recorded her in a private office without consent, which makes it inadmissible. And there's a problem with Sophia's recording, too. Our digital examiner found a gap in the audio, a few seconds missing near the middle. Elena gripped the edge of the bed. What does that mean? It means the defense is going to say someone edited it. They're pointing at Damien. Elena closed her eyes. Downstairs, she could hear Lily's laughter mixing with Doc's low chuckle, the smell of pancakes drifting up through the floorboards. And for a moment, the ordinary sweetness of it felt like something already slipping away. By midday, the local news was running a story with Elena's photograph beside a grainy picture of Cole's motorcycles parked outside the repair shop. The headline read, Charity worker tied to biker gang in alleged takeover plot. Elena read it 3 times before she could make her hand stop shaking enough to set the phone down. The donation stopped within hours. By early afternoon, Haven Bridges Bank had frozen all accounts pending review, and Elena got a call from a woman at the shelter, her voice cracking, asking where 3 mothers and their children were supposed to sleep that night. I don't know, Elena whispered, sitting on the shop's back steps with her head in her hands. I don't know. Cole found her there and said nothing at first. He just sat down beside her, close enough that his shoulder touched hers, and let the quiet do what words couldn't. This is my fault, Elena said. I dragged everyone into this. Ruth, Damien, you, Lily. You didn't drag anyone, Cole said. We all walked in with our eyes open. She didn't answer. She didn't believe him, not really, not with the whole town suddenly looking at her like she was something dangerous. The brick came through the window just after 4 o'clock. Elena heard the crash before she understood what it was, a sharp splintering of glass followed by Lily's scream from the upstairs apartment. She ran for the stairs with her heart in her throat, taking them 2 at a time, and burst into the room to find Cole already there, his body curved over Lily like a shield, shards of glass scattered across the floor around them. I'm okay, Lily said, shaking, pressed against Cole's chest. I'm okay, Aunt Elena. But Cole wasn't. A thin line of blood ran down his shoulder where a piece of glass had caught him, soaking through his shirt, and he didn't even seem to notice until Doc came thundering up the stairs and pressed a towel to the wound. Elena stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the blood, at the broken glass, at Lily's tear-streaked face, and something inside her went cold and still and certain. She couldn't do this anymore. She couldn't let this family, this good, gentle, undeserved family, keep bleeding for her. That night, after Doc had stitched Cole's shoulder at the kitchen table, and Lily had finally fallen asleep curled against a pillow, Elena sat alone with her laptop and bought 2 bus tickets for the 6 o'clock departure Tuesday morning. A friend from college lived 3 counties away, quiet and far from cameras and bricks and bikers. She found Cole in the workshop below, sitting on a stool beside Rebecca's old motorcycle tank, his shoulder bandaged, his eyes tired in the lamplight. "I'm taking Lily away tomorrow," she said. "Just until this settles." Cole didn't argue. He didn't ask her to stay, though something in his face told her it cost him everything not to. He rose slowly, walked to a closet in the corner, and pulled out a worn canvas travel bag, soft with age, the initials RB stitched faintly into the strap. "This was Rebecca's," he said, pressing it into her hands. "For emergencies. She always said everyone needs 1 bag ready, just in case." Elena held it against her chest, throat tight, unable to speak. "Sometimes protecting someone," Cole said quietly, "means letting them go, even when it breaks your heart." Tuesday morning came dark and quiet, the sky still black outside the window when Elena's alarm buzzed softly against the nightstand. She had barely slept. She sat up, rubbed her eyes, and looked over at Lily curled beneath the blanket, one small hand tucked under her cheek, the other still holding the edge of Sophia's old recipe box, like she never wanted to let it go. "Baby," Elena whispered, touching her shoulder gently. "Time to wake up." Lily's eyes opened slow, confused for a second, then remembering. "Are we really leaving?" "Just for a little while," Elena said, though the words tasted like ash in her mouth. She packed quickly and quietly, folding Lily's shirts into Rebecca's old canvas bag, tucking in the stuffed rabbit Lily still slept with sometimes, the notebook with its soft cardboard cover, a few photographs of Sophia. Downstairs, she heard low voices. Cole and Damien, talking in the kind of hushed tone people use when the news isn't good. She came down the stairs with Lily's hand in hers, just as Damien was rubbing his face with both palms, exhaustion carved into every line of him. "Victor Shaw is gone," he said, not bothering to soften it. "Cleared out of his motel room sometime last night. Took the original ledgers with him. Without those, all we've got is a recording with a hole in it and a story nobody wants to believe." Elena felt the floor tilt slightly beneath her feet. "So it's over." "It's not over," Cole said, but even his voice had gone quiet, careful, like a man trying to hold something together with his bare hands. Nobody argued when Elena picked up the bags. Doc appeared in the doorway a few minutes later, already dressed, keys in hand. "I'll follow with the luggage," he said. "Cole's driving you two." The ride to the bus station was silent except for the hum of the engine and the gray light beginning to creep along the edges of the sky. Elena stared out the window, watching the town slide past, the diner, the courthouse, the little bakery Sophia used to love, all of it looking like a life that belonged to someone else now. At the station, the platform was nearly empty, just a few early travelers huddled with coffee cups, and the bus already idling at the curb, its doors open, waiting. Lily held her notebook against her chest as they stood there. and before Elena could hurry her toward the line, she opened it and looked up at Cole. "I want to read you something," she said. Cole knelt down slowly, wincing a little at the pull in his bandaged shoulder, until he was eye level with her. "Okay." Lily flipped through pages covered in her careful, looping handwriting. "You fixed Miss Ruth's ramp and didn't take her money. You stood between me and the bad man at the diner. You made pancakes even though Doc says you burn everything." She paused, a small smile flickering, despite the tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. "You sat with me after my nightmares, and you didn't want to hurt Margaret even though she hurt Mama." She closed the notebook gently. "Mama used to say brave people get scared too. She said they just don't let scared make all their choices." Cole's jaw tightened, and for a moment he didn't say anything at all. Then he reached out and touched the edge of the notebook, like it was something sacred. "Your mama was a smart woman." "Then why are we running?" Lily asked, looking between him and Elena. Elena crouched down too, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Because I love you too much to let being brave get you hurt," she said softly. "This is me choosing us." Lily didn't argue, but her eyes stayed heavy with something that looked almost like disappointment. The bus driver called the final boarding. Cole stood and pulled Lily into a hug, careful of his shoulder, holding her like he was trying to memorize the shape of her. "You take care of your notebook," he said. "Keep writing down the good things." "I will," Lily whispered against his chest. He straightened and looked at Elena, his eyes steady even though his voice came low and rough. "Distance doesn't change anything. Wherever you go, you're still protected. That doesn't stop just because you're on a bus." Elena nodded, unable to trust her own voice, and took Lily's hand to guide her up the steps. The doors folded shut with a hiss. Through the window, as the bus pulled away from the curb, Elena looked back and saw Cole standing alone on the empty platform, hands in his pockets, watching them go, growing smaller and smaller until the road curved and he disappeared from sight entirely. The apartment above the repair shop felt bigger than it had any right to feel. Cole stood in the doorway for a long moment before he made himself walk inside. Lily's drawings were still taped to the refrigerator, curling a little at the corners from the heat of the stove. One showed 3 stick figures standing in front of a motorcycle, the tallest one wearing a triangle that was supposed to be a leather vest. Underneath, in careful crayon letters, Lily had written, "My family." Elena's coffee cup still sat by the sink, a half-inch of cold coffee gone flat at the bottom. She hadn't even had time to finish it. Cole picked up the cup, turned it over in his hands, and set it back down without washing it. Somehow it felt wrong to erase the last small proof that she had been here. He heard boots on the stairs a few minutes later. Doc didn't knock. He never did. "You look like a man deciding to give up," Doc said, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. "I look like a man whose shoulder hurts," Cole said. "Your shoulder's fine. It's the rest of you I'm worried about." Doc walked over, picked up Lily's drawing, and studied it like it was a piece of evidence. "You know what Rebecca taught you? She taught you that when somebody's drowning, you jump in the water. You don't ask if it's smart. You don't wait for permission. You just go." Cole didn't answer. "But Elena," Doc went on, "she taught you something different. She taught you that after you pull somebody out of the water, you gotta stay long enough to watch them breathe again. That's the part you never learned, Cole. That's the part Rebecca's death never gave you the chance to learn." "She's not coming back, Doc." "Maybe not, but that don't mean you stop being the man she found in that diner." Doc set the drawing back on the refrigerator, smoothing the tape down with his thumb. "Question is whether you're gonna be that man even when nobody's watching." Cole didn't say anything to that either, but something in his chest had shifted, just slightly, like a stone settling into new ground. Across town, Ruth Bennett stood in the fellowship hall of her church, a clipboard in one hand and a phone pressed to her ear with the other. Haven Bridge's doors were locked, its bank accounts frozen, and 3 families who depended on its shelter program had nowhere to go that night. "I don't care if you've never met a biker in your life," Ruth said into the phone, her voice sharper than she intended. "There are children sleeping in a church basement tonight because a woman we all trusted stole their safety net. I need casseroles, I need motel vouchers, and I need people who can drive." By evening, the fellowship hall had filled with an unlikely assortment of people. Retired teachers stacked donated blankets next to boxes of canned soup brought by a Baptist youth group. 2 veterans from the VFW hall argued quietly with 3 of Cole's riders about the best way to load a truck, then somehow ended up working side by side anyway. A dozen church ladies eyed the leather vests with open suspicion, whispering behind their hands, until one of the riders, a burly man named Tank, picked up a screaming toddler and bounced her gently until she stopped crying, humming some tune under his breath that nobody recognized. Ruth watched it all from the doorway, arms crossed, feeling something loosen in her chest that she hadn't expected. She thought of Margaret's polished galas, her perfect speeches, her manicured hands accepting awards. And here were these rough, tattooed men carrying grocery bags up motel stairs without being asked, without expecting thanks, without a single camera in sight. "Never thought I'd see the day," one of the retired teachers muttered to Ruth. "Neither did I," Ruth admitted. "Maybe that says more about us than it does about them." By the time Cole arrived that night, drawn by Doc's insistence that he was needed, the hall buzzed with an energy that felt different from anything Haven Bridge had managed in years. Nobody flinched when he walked in. A woman he didn't recognize simply handed him a stack of folded towels and pointed him toward the supply closet. Later, back in the quiet apartment, Cole stood at the small shelf beside his bed, where Rebecca's photograph had rested alone for years, her smile frozen in faded color, her eyes still soft with the same warmth he remembered. He picked up Lily's drawing from the refrigerator, careful not to tear the tape, and set it beside the photograph. The 2 women, brought accidentally together, watched over the same small room. Cole stood there a long moment, letting himself feel the guilt he'd carried for years loosen its grip, just slightly. Loving them didn't erase her. It never would. The bus rocked along the highway, tires humming against wet pavement. Elena stared out the window at fields blurring past, gray and empty under a sky that couldn't decide whether to rain. Lily sat curled against her side, quiet in the way she got when she was thinking too hard about things 8-year-olds shouldn't have to think about. "Aunt Elena?" "Yeah, baby?" Lily had Sophia's locket cupped in both hands, turning it over and over the way she always did when she needed something to hold. It was small and silver, shaped like a heart, with tiny scratches along the edges from years of being worn. "I think it's broken," Lily said. "The back part moves." Elena glanced down. "What do you mean, moves?" Lily held it out. Elena took it carefully, tilting it towards the window light. The back plate, the smooth silver oval that had always seemed solid, shifted slightly under her thumb. She pressed harder. It clicked and swung open like a tiny door. Elena's breath caught. Inside, tucked flat against the metal, was a memory card no bigger than her fingernail. "Mama put something in there?" Lily whispered. "I don't know yet," Elena said, though her hands were already trembling. "Let's find out." She dug through her bag for the adapter she kept for her phone, the one she used for transferring old photos, and slid the tiny card inside. Her phone screen flickered, then filled with a list of files. Photographs. Dozens of them. Ledger pages, bank confirmations, transfer records with dates going back over a year, and one video file, dated the night Sophia died. Elena's thumb hovered over it. Lily leaned in close, and Elena almost stopped her, almost told her to look away. But Lily had already lost her mother once to secrets nobody explained. Elena wouldn't do that to her again. She pressed play. Sophia's face filled the screen, tired and pale, sitting in her car with rain streaking the windshield behind her. Her voice was low, urgent. If you're watching this, something happened to me. Elena, I need you to listen. She glanced toward the window, then back at the camera. Margaret knows I found the transfers. She told me if I go to the police, she'll say the shelter falsified housing records to get more funding. She said she'd expose every woman who ever stayed there, tell the world their names, where they used to run from. She'll destroy Haven Bridge just to save herself. Sophia wiped her eyes. Damien tried to stop me from meeting her alone tonight. He said it wasn't safe. I should have listened to him. She let out a shaky breath. He didn't take the money, Elena. He's been helping me the whole time. Please believe that. The video shook slightly, the phone lifting toward the windshield. Through the rain-streaked glass, headlights approached from the opposite direction, then slowed, then stopped near the bridge railing. A dark sedan. A man got out, tall, moving with the kind of calm that belonged to someone used to not being seen. That's him, Sophia whispered. That's the man who's been following me. The video ended there. Elena sat frozen, the phone still glowing in her palm. Lily had gone very still beside her. That proves Damien didn't lie, Elena said quietly, mostly to herself. That proves he never changed the recording. She thought of Margaret's calm voice at the gala, her manicured hands folded over the podium, and felt something harden in her chest. The bus slowed. Brakes hissed. Outside, a sign read, "Next stop" in faded yellow letters. We're getting off, Elena said suddenly, gathering their bags. Lily didn't ask why. She just nodded and took Elena's hand. The station was small, just a covered bench and a vending machine humming under a flickering light. Elena's fingers shook as she dialed Cole's number, pressing the phone hard against her ear. He picked up on the second ring. Elena, I'm sorry, she said, the words spilling out before she could stop them. I let fear make the choice instead of trusting what you helped me find. I shouldn't have run. There's nothing to forgive, Cole said, his voice steady, warm. You hear me? Nothing. Behind him, she heard an engine turn over, then another, then a whole chorus of them rumbling to life. We're coming, Cole said. Just tell me where you are. The station light flickered again, buzzing like a tired bee, and Elena watched the road for so long her eyes started to water. Lily sat on the bench beside her, swinging her feet, still holding the locket closed in her fist. Do you hear that? Lily asked. Elena did. A low rumble, far off at first, then closer, growing until it wasn't one sound anymore but many, engines rolling together like thunder that had learned to walk. Headlights swept across the parking lot. One by one the motorcycles pulled in, their riders cutting the engines until the night went quiet again, quiet in a way that felt full instead of empty. Cole swung off his bike first. He didn't run. He walked, steady and sure, the way he always did, but Elena saw something in his face she hadn't seen before. Relief, maybe, or just the plain and simple look of a man who had been afraid and was trying not to show it. Behind him came Doc, then Ruth, riding on the back of one of the bikes with her silver hair wind-blown and her church cardigan buttoned crooked. 3 more riders followed, saddlebags packed full, and when Doc swung his leg off his bike, Elena saw blankets folded neatly across the back seat, boxes of canned food, a stack of children's coats still wearing their price tags. "We didn't stop," Doc said, catching her looking. "Figured the family still needed help even if the charity's in pieces. Ruth's been driving us all over town collecting what she could." Ruth gave a small, tired smile. "Turns out people give a lot more than you'd think, once you ask them plain." But Elena barely heard the rest. She was already moving toward Cole, and he met her halfway, folding her into his arms without a single question. He didn't ask why she left. He didn't ask if she was scared. He just held her, one hand pressed flat against her back, steady as a wall. "I'm not running again," Elena whispered into his chest. "I know," he said. "You never really were." Lily tugged at Cole's sleeve, and he crouched down, letting her show him the locket, the video, the tiny card that had been hiding inside her mother's necklace all along. Cole's jaw tightened as Elena explained what the recording showed, the sedan, the man's silhouette, Sophia's voice breaking as she spoke Damien's name. "This is it," Elena said, holding out the memory card in her palm. "This is everything." Cole took it carefully, like it weighed more than it looked. "Then we get it where it needs to go." They loaded into Doc's truck, blankets shoved into the back beside boxes of supplies, and Elena called Detective Price the moment the engine started. Price picked up fast, her voice sharp and awake despite the late hour. "Bring it straight to the station," Price said. "Don't stop anywhere else. I'll meet you at the door." The ride back into town passed in a blur of yellow streetlights and rain-slicked roads. Lily fell asleep against Elena's arm, worn out from a day that had asked too much of an 8-year-old. Elena watched her niece breathe, slow and even, and felt something in her chest finally loosen. At the station, Detective Price was waiting exactly as promised, coffee in hand, eyes tired but focused. She took the memory card without wasting time on pleasantries, plugging it into a laptop while 2 other officers gathered behind her. Minutes stretched into almost an hour. Elena sat beside Cole in the hard plastic chairs, Ruth pacing near the vending machine, Damien arriving not long after with his coat still damp from the rain. Nobody spoke much. They just waited. Finally, Price looked up. "Timestamps match the bank's server logs exactly. The ledger photos line up with account numbers we already flagged. This isn't edited. This is real." Relief passed through the room, like a held breath finally released. "It's enough to reopen the search for Victor Shaw," Price said. "We've had eyes out for him since the gala, but this gives us grounds to move faster." Elena reached for Cole's hand, and he laced his fingers through hers without a word. It was nearly midnight when one of the officers rushed in from a back room, phone still pressed to his ear. "We got something," he said. "A charge on Shaw's company card. Roadside motel, 20 minutes out." Detective Price was already reaching for her jacket. "Get a team together. Now." The motel sign buzzed the same tired hum as the bus station light. Half its letters burned out, so it just read, "Hotel Vac NCY." Detective Price led the team across the wet parking lot before the sun had even thought about rising, her flashlight cutting through the gray morning mist. Victor Shaw did not run. He was sitting on the edge of the motel bed when they broke through the door, still in his clothes from the day before, a duffel bag half-packed beside him, like he'd been deciding for hours whether to leave. When the officers said his name, he just nodded, like he'd been waiting for someone to say it. The ledgers were in his car, stuffed under the passenger seat in a plastic grocery bag. Real ones, water stained at the edges, Margaret's handwriting looping across the pages in blue ink. At the station, under the fluorescent lights, Shaw sat across from Detective Price with his hands folded on the table. He looked smaller than Elena remembered him, not like a man who chased people through parking lots and left threatening notes under a child's pillow. He looked like someone who had been carrying something heavy for a long time and was relieved to finally set it down. "Margaret paid me to follow her," he said, his voice flat. "The sister, Sophia. She'd figured out the accounts, and Margaret wanted to know how much she knew, who she'd told. And the night she died?" Price asked. Shaw's jaw worked for a moment before the words came. "I was supposed to scare her, get her to hand over whatever she had. I followed her onto the bridge, told her to stop, and she pulled out her phone, said she was calling someone. Her sister, probably." His eyes flicked toward the mirrored glass, though he couldn't have known Elena was standing behind it. "She backed up too fast. Rain had made the walkway slick. She just went over." The room was silent except for the hum of the recorder. "I didn't push her," Shaw said. "I want that on record. I didn't touch her, but I didn't call for help either. I called Margaret instead." He rubbed a hand over his face. "She told me to take whatever Sophia had dropped and bring it to her. Told me to stay quiet. Keep watching the sister. Make sure nothing else turned up." Price's voice stayed level, but Elena, watching from behind the glass, felt her whole body go cold. And then, strangely, calm. It wasn't the answer she'd feared most. It wasn't the answer she'd hoped for either. It was just the truth. Plain and terrible and finally out in the open. Margaret was arrested again before noon, this time with no attorney fast enough to stop it. The charges stacked up one after another: embezzlement, intimidation, obstruction, concealment. Ruth watched from the station lobby with her arms crossed tight over her cardigan, saying nothing, her eyes wet. The sun was fully up by the time Elena stood at the railing of the bridge, the same one Sophia had fallen from 8 months before. The morning was clear. Birds calling somewhere in the trees along the bank, the water below moving slow and silver in the early light. Cole stood beside her, quiet, his hand resting light on her shoulder. Lily held Elena's other hand, swinging their arms gently, the locket now empty around her neck but still worn like something sacred. Damien stood a little apart, staring down at the water. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "I should have walked her home that night. I should have told someone sooner. I'm sorry, Sophia." Nobody spoke for a long moment. The wind moved through the grass along the bank. Elena reached into her bag and pulled out a small bundle of cinnamon blossoms, tied with kitchen twine, the kind Sophia used to keep in a jar on the windowsill. She set them gently against the railing, where the metal had gone soft with rust. "It wasn't my fault," she said quietly, testing the words. Then again, stronger. "It wasn't my fault." Lily looked up at her. "Mama would say you don't have to carry it anymore." Elena bent down and kissed the top of her head. Then she stood, took Lily's hand in one of hers and Cole's in the other, and together they walked back down the path, away from the bridge, toward the waiting truck and the long, bright stretch of morning ahead of them. Wednesday afternoon settled over the Haven Bridge office like a held breath finally let out. Elena stood in the main room, the one with the peeling paint and the donation jar by the door, and watched as folding chairs got set up in rows. Word had spread fast. By 2 o'clock, the room was full of people who had once trusted Margaret Vale with everything. Detective Price arrived first with the news. "Emergency funds are being released this afternoon," she said, holding a folder against her chest. "The court agreed the families waiting on housing shouldn't suffer while the rest of the investigation plays out. It's not all the money, but it's enough to get people off waiting lists by Friday." A murmur of relief moved through the room. Somewhere near the back, A woman Elena recognized from the shelter program pressed a hand to her mouth and closed her eyes. "Margaret's assets are being seized," Price continued. "House, car, investment accounts. All of it goes toward restitution. It won't cover everything she took, but it's a start." Ruth stood near the front, her cardigan buttoned to the top button even though the room was warm. When Price finished, Ruth cleared her throat and looked out at the volunteers, the shelter families, the board members who had once approved Margaret's reports without question. "The board met this morning," Ruth said, her voice steady but heavy. "We're resigning. All of us. We should have asked harder questions. We should have looked closer. We didn't, and people got hurt because of it. That's on us, not just Margaret." Nobody argued with her. Nobody clapped either. It was just true, and the room let it sit there. Then Ruth turned to Elena. "We want you to take over. Interim director, starting now. Permanent, if the community votes yes." Elena felt her stomach drop. "Ruth, I don't know if I can build something better than what came before. Margaret was polished. She knew how to run a gala, talk to donors, make everyone feel like they were part of something important. I don't have that." "Good," Ruth said simply. "We don't need polished. We had polished. Polished lied to our faces for years." "But what if I become someone like her?" Elena's voice cracked. "What if the position changes me? What if I start caring more about how things look than how they actually are?" Ruth stepped closer and took both of Elena's hands. "Honest leadership doesn't mean perfect leadership, Elena. It means when you get something wrong, you say so out loud, in front of everybody, and you fix it. Margaret's sin wasn't that she made mistakes. It's that she buried them under a smile." From the back of the room, Cole stood. He hadn't planned to speak, but something in him pushed forward anyway. The room turned toward him, some faces still wary of the leather vest and the weathered hands. "There's something you all should know," he said. "Years ago, my wife Rebecca got turned away from an emergency shelter during a storm. No beds left. She got sick that night and never fully recovered." He paused, steadying his voice. "After she passed, I gave money, anonymously, to help start this place. I didn't want my name on it. I figured a man like me would only hurt its reputation." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ruth's hand went to her chest. "I'm not telling you this so you'll thank me," Cole continued. "I'm telling you because I don't want control of this place. I never did. I just want it run honest, open books. No more secrets hiding behind good intentions." Elena looked at him, throat tight, and then back at Ruth and the room full of hopeful, tired faces. "All right," Elena said finally. "I'll do it. But not the way Margaret did it." She took a breath. "Former shelter residents get permanent seats on the board, not as guests, as members with real votes. Every dollar that comes in and goes out gets posted where anyone can see it, staff and donors alike. And when we choose partners, we don't judge them by their suits or their patches. We judge them by what they actually do." Ruth smiled, the first full smile Elena had seen from her in weeks. Then it settled. A vote followed that afternoon, quick and near unanimous. Someone in the back suggested a new name, and the room agreed without much debate. The Rebecca and Sophia Haven. The first week moved fast, the way things do when a lot of people finally decide to help at the same time. Ruth called 3 churches before breakfast on Monday. By Tuesday, 2 of them had opened their basements as temporary shelter space, folding cots lined up under stained glass windows. A motel off Route 9 agreed to hold 10 rooms at half price, the owner waving off Elena's thanks with a shrug. "My sister used a shelter once," he said. "This is easy math for me." Elena barely slept that week, but it was a different kind of tired than before. Not the tired of hiding, the tired of building something. Over the following month, An independent auditor named Grace Chen moved into a corner of the Haven office with 3 banker's boxes and a laptop that never seemed to close. Elena sat with her most afternoons, going line by line through the accounts Margaret had once guarded so carefully. It was slow, careful work, and some days it left Elena hollow with anger all over again. But every discrepancy they found, every dollar they traced, felt like a small piece of Sophia's warning finally being honored. Meanwhile, Cole's riders showed up with tools instead of leather jackets zipped to the chin. Doc led a crew that patched the Haven's roof. 2 younger riders repainted the front room a soft yellow, the color Lily picked because she said it looked like morning, not gray. Nobody asked to be paid. When Ruth tried to press money into Doc's hand, he just laughed and told her to buy the volunteers pizza instead. Ruth watched them work for a full afternoon before she finally said, out loud, to no one in particular, "I was wrong about a lot of things." Damien's case moved slower, but it moved. The formal clearance came through in writing, a single page that couldn't undo months of suspicion but mattered anyway. He kept going to counseling twice a week, and he became certified as a youth mentor through a program the county ran for kids in temporary housing. He never pushed his way into Lily's life. He waited to be invited, and when Elena said he could take Lily for ice cream on Saturdays, he showed up 10 minutes early every single time, like being on time was something he still had to prove to himself. By the 3rd month, the stolen funds began trickling back through the court's restitution order. Not all of it. Probably never all of it. But enough that the Haven could reopen its doors properly, with a printed budget taped to the wall by the entrance so anyone could see where every dollar went. Through all of it, Elena and Cole found a rhythm neither of them had expected. Tuesday dinners at Cole's apartment above the shop, Lily doing homework at the counter while Cole flipped pancakes for a Tuesday night, because Lily insisted breakfast food didn't need to wait for morning. Quiet evenings where Elena talked about Sophia without her voice breaking, and Cole talked about Rebecca without looking like the words cost him something he couldn't afford. They made room for both women, not by comparing them, but by letting each one exist fully in the space between Elena and Cole. On the 6-month anniversary of the day Elena first slid into his booth and whispered a desperate lie, Cole drove Elena and Lily back to the same roadside diner. The waitress recognized them instantly. "Well, look who it is," she said, grinning. "The husband looks a lot less scary without the rain." They sat in the same booth. Lily ordered pancakes even though it was dinner time, and nobody argued with her. After the plates were cleared, Cole reached into his jacket pocket. His hand wasn't quite steady, which surprised Elena more than anything else about the evening. "6 months ago," he said, "you asked me to be your husband, and you whispered it. You were so scared your voice barely came out." Elena felt her throat tighten. Cole opened his palm. A simple ring sat there. Plain gold, nothing flashy. "I'm not whispering this time," he said, loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "Elena Morales, will you let me become your real husband?" Lily gasped and shot up straight in the booth, her fork clattering against her plate. Elena looked at him, at the ring, at Lily's wide eyes, and felt 6 months of fear finally settle into something steady and sure. "Yes," she said. Lily let out a cheer, loud enough that the waitress laughed from across the room. Then Lily grabbed her notebook from her backpack, flipped to a fresh page, and began writing furiously, tongue poking out the corner of her mouth in concentration, recording the moment the way her mother had taught her. 3 months passed the way good things do when a lot of people love the same 2 families. Ruth found Sophia's favorite dress in a garment bag at the back of Elena's closet, a soft blue thing with small buttons down the front that Sophia had worn to every summer party she ever hosted. Ruth spread it across her kitchen table and studied it for a long time before she picked up her sewing kit. "I taught home economics for 11 years, she told Elena, pins between her lips. "Let an old woman have this." She took in the waist, let out the hem, and added a thin strip of lace at the collar that hadn't been there before. When Elena tried it on, she cried before she even looked in the mirror, just from the smell of it, cedar and something floral that still clung to the fabric after all this time. "She's going to be there," Ruth said quietly, smoothing the shoulder. "Just not the way we wanted." Doc took charge of the garden behind the Haven, like it was a mission briefing. He measured rows of folding chairs twice, made sure the sound system wouldn't cut out, and walked the perimeter fence 3 times the morning of the wedding just to be sure. When Cole told him he was worrying too much, Doc shrugged. "Rebecca would have wanted this day perfect," he said. "So would Sophia. I'm covering both bases." Damien spent 2 Saturday afternoons with Lily at the kitchen table, gluing the recipe box back together where the hinges had cracked. He sanded the corners smooth, and Lily picked out a small brass latch from the hardware store to replace the broken one. Together they copied Sophia's handwriting as best they could onto new recipe cards, careful not to lose a single measurement, a single note in the margins that said things like, "Lily loves extra cinnamon." The Haven's kitchen filled with the smell of that cinnamon bread the week before the wedding. 3 former residents took turns following Sophia's recipes exactly, determined that the reception tables would carry her taste into the garden. The morning of the wedding, the garden behind the Rebecca and Sophia Haven was full of folding chairs, wildflowers in mason jars, and more people than Elena expected. Church members sat next to leather-vested riders. Courthouse clerks sat next to shelter residents. Nobody seemed out of place. Ruth walked Elena down the grass aisle, her arm steady under Elena's shaking hand. "Sophia would be so proud of you," Ruth whispered, and Elena held on to those words the whole way to the front. Doc stood beside Cole as his best man, solid and quiet, the way he always was when something mattered. 2 photographs sat on a small table near the altar, one of Rebecca laughing on a motorcycle years ago, one of Sophia holding baby Lily. Nobody had to explain why they belonged together. Instead of gifts, guests had been asked to bring household supplies, and a long table near the entrance filled up with towels, blankets, and boxes of dishes, all of it meant for families moving out of shelters and into homes of their own. During the reception, Lily stood on a chair with her notebook open, her cheeks pink with excitement. "I used to think heroes looked like people in storybooks," she read, her voice carrying over the garden. "But now I know heroes can wear leather vests. They can carry regrets. They can admit when they were wrong. And they can stand beside someone who's scared until that person remembers how to stand up on their own." The applause that followed was warm and long, and Cole had to look away for a moment, blinking hard. Several weeks later, on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, the front door of the Haven opened slowly. A young mother stood there, her hand wrapped tight around her daughter's, her eyes darting around the yellow front room like she expected to be turned away. Elena moved toward her from one side. Cole came from the other, his leather vest worn openly, no longer something to explain away. Above the door hung a small wooden plaque, the words carved careful and clear. "Do not trust appearances. Trust the people who stay when helping you costs them something." "You're safe here," Elena said, reaching for the woman's hand. Cole knelt down to the little girl's height and smiled. "We've got you," he said. Elena reached over and took Cole's hand, no longer pretending, as the doors stayed open behind them. "I hope you like this story. Please share what's your favorite part of the story and where in the world you are watching from. Have a wonderful day."